All right, good morning. It's about 9:06, if I can see that correctly, and we'll call the meeting to order at this time. This is the North Bennington Graded School District, and this is the annual meeting. I'll go ahead and read the warning. The legal voters of the North Bennington Graded School District in the towns of Bennington and Shaftesbury, Vermont, County of Bennington are hereby warned and notified to meet in the gymnasium of the Village School of North Bennington on Saturday, February 29th, 2020 at 9 o'clock in the morning to transact the following business from the floor. Article 1 is to hear and dispose of the reports of the officers of the district for the past year and to discuss the proposed 2020-2021 budget. Article 2, to see if the district will authorize its school board to borrow money from time to time in anticipation of taxes. Article 3, to hold a public informational meeting on articles to be voted upon by Australian ballot on March 3rd, 2020. Article 4, to elect a moderator and delinquent tax collector for the fiscal year commencing July 1, 2020. Article 5, to transact any other business found proper when met. And we'll also read the articles that are for Australian ballot. The legal voters of North Bennington Graded School District are hereby warned further to meet on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020. That's at the North Bennington Village offices at the depot, when the polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. to transact business by Australian ballot as follows. Article A, to elect from the legal voters of the district one member of the Prudential Committee for a 2-year term beginning immediately. Article B, to elect from the legal voters of the district one member of the Prudential Committee for a 3-year term to begin immediately. And Article C, shall the voters of North Bennington Graded School District approve the school board to expend $2,928,465, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. Is it estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, it is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $17,987 per equalized pupil. This project spending per equalized pupil is 8.18% higher than spending for the current one. And as we move through the articles, you can certainly raise any questions you have about the budget at the proper time. Just ask that people turn off their cell phones or put them to a silent mode, please. Okay, so without objection, we'll move straight into Article 1, which is to hear and dispose of reports of the officers of the district for the past year and to discuss the budget. So please take it away, Prudential Committee. Thank you.
Demonstrators are going to give a slide presentation, PowerPoint presentation.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. On behalf of the Prudential Committee, I'm going to just give a really brief overview of the state of the district and the budget information for next year. So just for anybody who's new to this district and this meeting, we are a K-6 choice district. And part of the Mount Anthony Union District from grades 7 to 12. So our students can choose which elementary school they would attend in this district, and our residents make a variety of choices. But the majority of them choose to send their kids to this school, which is the Village School of North Bennington, which follows the Town Academy model. It has a commitment to educate all children in the district who desire to come here, and provides all of the necessary special education. So it's the 7th year of operation of the school right now. It has NEAS accreditation, and Tim Newbold, in a little while, the head of the village school, is going to give a presentation about state of the actual school and the programs here. So I'll move along. Okay, so as John just said, the proposed total budget for next year is $2,928,465. This is an increase, a considerable increase from fiscal year 20. And also the per pupil spending is going up, and the village school tuition also went up. And I'll talk a bit about the reasons for that as we go through here. Likewise, the tax rates, the proposed tax rates also are having to increase a bit, although not as much as we had feared initially, partially because we're carrying a pretty good fund balance forward from the current fiscal year. So tax rates in the North Bennington part of the district are going up to $1.66 per mil. In the Shaftesbury ID part of the district are going up to $1.46 per mil. So again, our tax rates for a number of years had been kind of inching down a little bit, and this year they, by necessity, are ticking back up, which is unavoidable. Okay, so the tuition support, where the dollars go to, our overall enrollment in the district is increasing. We're projecting next year for it to remain steady here at the village school. It could go up a little bit. We don't really actually know what the exact numbers would be, obviously, but the overall enrollment for the district is going up. So we're projecting more students going to Southshire and Highland Hall schools, and also a few more kids going into the other public schools, part of these, oh boy, I don't even remember the acronym, Southwest Vermont Unified Elementary School District schools, mostly Shaftesbury School. Okay, so while the enrollment has been going up, and this is part of the problem with the per pupil spending and tax rate, is that at the time the census was taken this year, the overall poverty level in our district had actually decreased, and this causes the adjusted pupil amount in the district to go down by the state's funding formula. So while we're actually increasing the number of pupils in the district we're projecting somewhere around 15 next year, our adjusted student enrollment is going down at the elementary level to 145 from 148. And that affects the funding formula a fair bit, and there really isn't much that we can do about that. So where the money is going, basically the same level as prior years. The vast majority of the funding is spent on actual instructional support for the instruction, and administration costs going to the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union, and special education staying about the same. But we also try to budget money every year to improve or maintain the quality of this building. Where the money is coming from is also roughly the same. State support grant is the majority of the funding. This year the fund balance bumps up the percentage a little bit because we seem to have this year by year increase decrease in the fund balance that we bring forward, which perfectly understand. Okay, and here's some of the bad news again, is that our funding per equalized pupil is going up. But again, this is partially due to increased costs and partially due to the adjusted pupil amount decreasing. Okay, so building maintenance. This year, the major project was completely redoing the girls' bathroom on the 3rd floor of the building here. This matches the redo of the boys' bathroom that we undertook in the prior fiscal year. Thank you very much to Kim Crawl, the Prudential Committee member who did a lot of the planning work for this, but can't be here today because she blew out her ACL and had surgery last week, and is home recovering right now. So other things that we're doing to work on the building or maintain the building, we're undertaking security enhancements. A lot of the cost here is going to increasing the phone and PA systems for alarm, but also more cameras and some window hardening. Some of this money is coming from a grant to increase school security. Some of it's being paid by the village school, and some of it's being covered. Costs are being shared by the Prudential Committee. We have to remove some of the older trees that are in poor health out in front of the building here. That's unfortunate, but we will be replanting some trees to replace those. The main thing that we're trying to plan for the future right now is replacing the roof of this building, which is over 20 years old, and that's definitely coming up. Coupled with that, we're looking at repainting the cornice trim, and there could be some lead abatement issues with that yet that we're investigating. We want to make sure it's done right, and so we're looking at the cost. We're working on getting bids for that right now. Some things that are done is that the boiler control system has now been upgraded. And okay, so like a word on the budget, the costs are increasing, and that's just something that all schools are facing. A big part of that is the increase in cost of health insurance, which is going up by double-digit amounts per year, and that's something that all of the schools are facing right now. Also, one of the things that's driving the cost increase is that our number of pupils are going up in the district year by year, but the state funding formula kind of lags behind that increase. So ultimately, we're going to be in better health because of that as the funding catches up with the actual number of students that we have. And again, we're trying to keep money in the budget every year to maintain this building in a very good state. And that's all I have, so we'll entertain any questions that anybody has.
Could I inject something here? In my letter to the district, which is in page 10 of the report, I deal with talk about these increases directly in a couple of paragraphs. As Ken mentioned, our equalized pupil number dropped, though our actual ADM rose, because at the time of the census in October, the certification rate for free and reduced lunch children who needed free and reduced lunch was pretty low, but it's now back to about where it normally would be. So we did not benefit from that because that's when the census is taken. Those numbers dropped. We lost 3 pupils. And that cost us about 1.7 cents on the increase in the tax rate, 7.1%, 7.1 cents increase, not 7.1 cents percent. And the other 2 factors were that about 56% of the increase is due to the increase in the number of students, because this represents quite a large jump for this district from FY20 to what we're estimating FY21. And then the balance was due to the tuition increases all around, which we don't have any control over as the UESD's increase. That's gone up. And the statewide average for K-6 tuition has gone up by quite a bit. So, and some of the schools we send to that are independent use that as their base for building us. So the flex up will do that as well.
Can I just ask a question? So you said some of the sending schools use that base, that statewide average tuition.
Let me point out that they're, under state law, they're allowed to use statewide average, up to statewide average unless the community votes otherwise.
Is that statewide average higher or lower than the village schools per pupil rate?
It's a bit lower, yes. It's a bit lower.
Lower, thank you.
That's why we put a ballot item for the village school on there. Otherwise, we would not have a particular ballot item.
Yeah, the reason that ballot item for the school tuition needs to be on the ballot is because it's higher than the state average.
And so, I'm sorry, just to follow up on that, could the other independent schools to which you send also petition for a ballot item?
They could, they haven't, and the board would determine whether they would be willing to entertain it.
Following on, Ray, when you pointed out, and I keep bringing this, I guess, the free and reduced lunch portion of the school, and I wanted to make sure that all the kids are getting all the benefits of the program, like all the other surrounding districts can do that. And I know we have a program in place and we're doing things, but I just wanted to make sure we kept in the back of our minds the opportunity to try to work out the differences still to be able to join forces with the regular districts and have free and reduced lunch for everybody. And I don't know what all the obstacles are in terms of holding that back or keeping us from doing it, but I just want to keep that going, that interest in that.
Yeah, I thank you for pointing that out, and I think we are interested in that, but we were interested in that when we started this process, but there were some obstacles which I won't review put in the way. But because the rest of the district, the supervisory union, operates the food service and under the Department of Ag program, where all children receive free lunch. That's what Leon was referring to. And it's funded basically on the, as I understand it, the kind of surplus in funds for free and reduced lunch children that the high school receives basically. And there's enough volume there to cover all the students in all the districts. And we think that we would not be an undue burden on that. We need to see if it's a possibility that we would consider trying to get that group to accept that allow us back into it so that we can use that program.
Any further questions for Mr. Schrader?
I have one
between the North Shaftesbury ID rate and the North Bennington rate? Why are they different?
It's based on the common level of appraisal, which is different
Okay.
between the two towns.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's the convoluted formula that the state uses to.
Depending on the town, that radius, okay.
There's a series of formulas in the spreadsheet, and I quite honestly don't understand the logic behind them.
I mean, I think,
Well, I'll take this. So, Rachel, you're in Shaftesbury District 1.
Yeah.
Shaftesbury reappraised more recently than North Bennington, and so their common level of appraisal is about 106.
Add value, okay.
So that means that your tax rate actually goes down because you're over-assessed.
Right, there are two different things going on, and okay.
Right, and North
So you could be
Bennington's
spending the same.
about 7-8% below full value.
Okay.
So our tax rate goes up to accomplish equity between not just our two districts, but statewide.
Okay.
Because it's a statewide determination to take sales from your community, and they determine a coefficient of dispersion. That's where they generate this figure in the common level.
And unfortunately, it's often based on very few data points.
Yes.
You know, during 2005 to now, a few years ago, very few sales at all in the Bennington pool where they were coming up with that, because we're part of Bennington. And I think they use those numbers as well as, it's district is different. So it really, but it's always been the case that North Bennington has been considered undervalued, because Bennington hasn't done a reassessment of their property since 2001, or something like that. So, if they do that, those numbers will change. There's also a thing that goes on with sales that are recorded in Bennington can be often bad data. There's a lot of sales that go between families and this and that causes a value for the property to sell for substantially less than market value. And if those aren't caught and pulled out, and I doubt they are in most cases, it forces or vice versa.
Yep.
At any rate, I think we'd probably be better off if they didn't do it at all. But that's why it's a little cheaper from a tax perspective to live in District 1 than it is to live in North Bennington.
Since we're on district reports, I'd like to point to starting on page 11, there are some dedications in this report to several people in our district who had some relationship to this school district, passed away. We've memorialized them. And also, belatedly, we put an item in for someone who's still living, Kay Hardy, who retired a couple of years ago, and I felt we ought to start saying some fine things about people who are still alive. So I invite you to read them. That's your pleasure. I'll mention one of them in particular, Pete Niles, who graduated from high school, North Bennington High School. So he was here for his whole education career in the primary and secondary grades. And he served on the village school board, as well as cherished member of this community. He came here for many years to help John Ulrich's class tap maple trees and collect sap and create maple syrup. Learn that tradition from Vermont. I'm sorry that he's gone.
All right.
Thank you. Is there any further reports from the board?
I don't think so. Probably talking too much already.
And is there any further discussion on the proposed budget? Okay, so I think before we move to Article 2, if there would be a motion and acceptance for the reports.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Johnson. Is there a second? Mr. Ulrich has seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll ask that all those in favor of accepting the reports, so this is not the budget, but just the reports on the budget and the other issues, so all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, the reports have been accepted, and we will move on to Article 2, which is to determine if the district will authorize the school board to borrow money from time to time in anticipation of taxes. Is there any question about that article? Is the article understood? Or
Yeah, I have one point about that. Usually this would be, for a number of years, we, in anticipation of taxes, we would borrow money. And it was described as a tax anticipation note. We no longer finance in that way. Our current treasurer takes a line of credit out, which turns out to be probably cheaper for us. She takes out enough to cover what she estimates from the cash flow sheet that we'll need and returns it as swiftly as possible. Whereas before, under the anticipation note, we would hold on to the cash because we were earning arbitrage on the money. It turns out it's simpler and easier and keeps us more protected from liability to do it this way because we rarely borrow anywhere near what we are. We haven't borrowed anywhere near where we take out as a line of credit and we return it as soon as we're done. That's what we do currently, and that's what this article is about, authorizing us to authorize the treasurer.
Given that there's one more opportunity to ask questions, I would entertain a motion to accept Article 2 as written. Mr. Johnson moves to accept Article 2. Is there a second? Mr. Ulrich has seconded the motion. Is there any further discussion or questions on the motion as written? Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting Article 2, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Is there any opposed? There is none, and the article passes. Article 3 is to hold a public informational meeting on articles to be voted upon by Australian ballot March 3rd, 2020. So if the board has any comments or if others have prepared comments or reports on Articles A, B, and C that are to be elected or to be voted on Tuesday, this will be presented back information or ask questions. Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. So this, I didn't read all the way through the articles. And Article D on page 22 is actually, I'll read it now. Shall the voters of North Bennington Graded School District approve an annual 2020-2021 tuition rate 4,900 pupils who are residents of the North Bennington Graded School District. And so that's as outlined in Mr. Schrader's report. So is there questions? Or
Well, let's take Article A and B. Those are for members to elect members to this prudential committee. So, first one is for a 2-year term to start immediately, and I'd like to introduce Kieran McNamara. Would you stand up? If you wish to say something to assembled throngs.
I mean, just 3 of my kids have gone through the school, they're going through the school, kindergarten, 5th and 6th. Wife and I moved up here almost 7 years ago. But she was born and raised around here, and we met back here, so just trying to get back into being more involved with my kids.
Thanks for stepping up.
Yep, thank you. The second article is to elect someone to this board for a 3-year term. I'm running for re-election to that. I normally have taken a 2-year term, but in order to accommodate someone stepping onto the board who has no experience, and maybe finds he doesn't like it after 2 years, I decided I'd take a 3-year term today to run. I've been, this is my 20th year on this board, and I'm getting a little old for this. By the end of this term, if I'm elected, at least 23 years, I'm hoping I'm going to be able to retire.
So do we need to say anything about the nominations at this point?
No.
Just to hear comments and as to who's actually,
right, so Article 3 is not a voting article, it's just an informational item where we're just getting information on any of the articles A through D. And so knowing these 2 gentlemen are running for those seats, is there any other, is anyone else aware of candidates for those seats, or is there any present that would like to run for those seats? Okay, so moving on to we're still on Article 3, but I think we should just quickly say that Articles C and D are also items that are voted on Tuesday. So if there are any questions or discussion or information on those articles, now would be the time to present that information or ask those questions.
There is some overlap in these articles, and obviously we've already dealt with Article C in our presentation, and the whole booklet is about, at least half of it is about North Bennington and our budget. So, certainly welcome to ask any questions about anything that's presented in this first half of this booklet.
Yes.
I'm sure it's in here somewhere, and I heard you say it went up, but can you just quickly confirm what is the state average tuition rate?
I have to look that up, because I thought I was given in the budgeting process on central office gave us an incorrect figure. So I have to go to, if I can get the computer to go to email I received this past week. Sorry about this.
I have a question that maybe the vice chair could answer while you're busy there. I think it's a little simpler, and it's not, I want to get the answer to your question too, but you mentioned that the rate is based on the census, but you refer to the information that's gathered annually from the school and all the districts to put that together. So that's not the federal census numbers, that's an annual census that's taken from parents that respond to.
You're referring to where they come up with the equalized pupil numbers? Yeah, it's imperfect in that sense because it's reported. It's self-reporting too, so it's where that information comes from, so it's probably skewed a little bit when it's dealing with issues of poverty and
If somebody may be considered on the scale of income, but just doesn't want to bother with the form, they can just return and say no request.
that's my understanding.
That's right.
That all happens here at the school. with respect.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Where they come up with that number for the equalized pupil adjustments based on income sensitivity or that,
It's some data that they already have possession of, and then some is self-reported.
So is it, this being a census, a federal census year, does that have any effect on the equalized pupil?
No.
Not yet. It may the following year.
or
But I
5
don't-
years later,
but I
once
don't
they
know that it's
digest
gonna
that
impact.
data, the state might use that as their baseline. But it takes years for that, I see it at the census.
So most of our data is coming up through the system through food services and things like that for families in need.
So, the number that is published, just recently published, for 2021, average announced tuition of Union Elementary schools is $14,859.
Any follow-up to that? So I think that takes care of Article 3, and Article 4 is to elect a moderator, which is my position, and the delinquent tax collector for the fiscal year commencing July 1, 2020. So if there are any nominations for moderator, I would be willing to serve as moderator again next year if so nominated.
I'll nominate John Langston.
I'll second it.
Any discussion on that? Nobody's itching to.
No, you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Fabulous. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? No, that would carry unanimously.
Oh, you know you love it.
And the delinquent tax collector, I can't remember from last year.
It's Mary.
It's Mary.
It's Mary, she'd like to do this again.
Okay. So, Mary Rogers is currently willing to serve in that role, if so nominated.
So moved.
A second.
And there's a second. Although, any discussion on that?
I will have a good word to say. She's done a fantastic job. And our delinquencies are down to virtually nothing. And she works with every person who needs help to come up with a payment plan and to support them in making those payments. And people are complying. So I think even if we had a candidate other than her, I think she would be the strongest candidate possible. done the job and done it very well.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none opposed, the motion carries. Okay, so Article 5 is to transact any other business found proper when met, so this is an opportunity for anybody to present information or ask questions on any item they feel is related, concerns the North Bennington Graded School District.
We've allowed Tim to do a presentation for the whole school for the past 2 years.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming in on this Saturday morning. It's always an interesting time for people to
Wouldn't mind, I know it seems like we all know you, but this is.
I will introduce myself. So I am Tim Newbold. I am the head of the village school presently, and this is now my 4th year in that role.
Okay.
And this is sort of a quick presentation on the state of the school overall. So I think when the school was created, the most important part of its mission was that children are at the heart of all we do. And I think that piece, we look at that at the board level and at the staff level on a regular basis. And I think that is still holds very much true within the institution. And it's really what drew me and my family here to North Bennington. We're still excited to continue that process. So by the numbers, I do want to make one small correction to Tim's earlier presentation. The 114 that he had used for the number of students was what actually we budgeted for looking forward at this year. But what it ended up turning out to be is 107.5. And the difference there, the variance there, came down to a number of different factors. One of the biggest ones was we budgeted all this stuff before the closing of Southern Vermont College. And once that institution closed, we ended up losing some families because they had to seek employment in other places. So that was sort of an unforeseen thing in our budgeting process. And in our budgeting process, it's very different than a purely public model or an independent model. It is a hybrid. That's what we are as this institution. In the public model, you set your overall budget, and that's what gets voted on. In an independent school model, you set your tuition, but you know pretty closely how many kids you're going to get because the contracts have already come in for the families at this point in the year for the next year. So you already know about 95% of the families are going to be returning or not returning and things like that. We're in this weird cycle where we don't necessarily know, and community events and things like that and family decisions can impact our budget. So it changes those numbers pretty dramatically, pretty quickly. So I'll go into some more detail as we go further. We have 39 staff presently, 25 full-time staff members and 14 part-time or contractual staff members. And then we also have a group of really dedicated artists from the Vermont Arts Exchange that work with our students on a regular basis. And that is probably around 9 individuals in total. And then we have many, many partnerships with the community. This is just to highlight a couple of them. As I said, the Vermont Arts Exchange is one of our really wonderful partnerships, and they do so much work with us, and I think really set us apart in that area of our development with children. The North Bennington Strings program is now, I think, in its about 27th year, and is a truly unique program in the area and in the state that we have free, available to all the students who want to participate. They can take lessons, and we have instruments for them. And most years we have about, and again this year we have almost 50% of the students who are participating taking either violin or cello. I think it's just been a wonderful part of the school for many, many years, and we want to keep that alive and going. The Highland Hall Garden Program, we do a partnership with them where the kids go there every spring and every fall to work in the garden, learn about gardening, and they do that at a sort of almost a no cost to us to make that happen for our institution, and I think it's one of the highlights for the kids. The volunteers we have a multitude of volunteers in the building. Every day we have volunteers coming from our community. And if we look at the overall number, we're well over 100 volunteers, people doing various amounts of hours over the course of the year, but it's an amazing thing to see. Every day we have people in the building volunteering. Bennington College, we have a wonderful partnership with them. We have students working on their fieldwork term with us almost every year. They also run our language program, which is really just an introduction to languages. It's just and what's wonderful about that is a number of the students who come and teach those programs for our kids are native speakers. So the kids get a cultural experience as well, because a lot of those kids are coming from other places in the world and can really tell them a little bit about what that's been. We've had students from China and Spain and various places come in to do those instructions. Right now, presently, we have had Italian, French, Spanish, and Chinese in the last year. And the local businesses have been a tremendous partnership for us. We've started a new program this year where we have partners in education, and the business partners in education has been a really great piece for us, and we have a lot of great support from local businesses and organizations, and we highlight them at different events in sort of an exchange of that partnership, that they help support our ongoing programs. I will briefly go over this. We're now in our third year of our strategic plan. Two of the big goals are programmatic. We have financial goals and enrollment goals and development goals, but I'll quickly review some of those. The programmatic goal, the big overarching programmatic goal, is really investing time, energy, and resources to strengthen our academic, social, emotional, and civic curriculums. And some of the things we've done over the last number of years as we've worked on mindset and focusing on a growth mindset and how much of an impact that can have on young people. The fact that if people can switch that in their head and think that it's not that they can't do something, it's just they can't do something yet, it really has a profound impact in education in all pieces. This year, over the summer, we, with the kids, as sort of a connection to the social, emotional, and civic curriculums, they came up with a constitution for the school with four big tenets for them, which was be safe, be kind, be respectful, and have fun. And there were representatives from various grades who are a very huge part of creating that constitution, and it's something we try to live by each and every day. Some things that we're planning for the future are right now this year, we spent a good deal on some things around sixth grade leadership and service, and they spent a couple days in an off-campus trip doing that and bringing some service learning into their curriculum. And they're going to be doing a larger service project as we go into the spring, and we hope to keep that going from year to year going forward. Something for next year that we've been building right now is we're going to switch over to a fifth and sixth grade team model. So what that means is there's going to be homerooms for each of those classrooms, and then the teachers are going to focus on different parts of the curriculum. One teacher is going to focus on the math and science end of the curriculum. The other teacher is going to focus on the language, arts, and humanities end of the program. And what we think that's going to do is it's going to prepare them for the next part of their education, which involves a lot of switching of classes and things like that. It also is, what this also does is I think it's developmentally appropriate, is it expands their connections to their community. They'll be doing things as a whole 5th and 6th grade team as well, so they'll have some more interactions with one another. And then the other piece there is one of the things that I think we find that a lot of students struggle with at all levels, but especially as they enter into the middle school level, is executive functioning, which is organization. And this, by having this, moving around, things like that, will really help them focus on how do they work on their organizational skills so that they get ready for the next level. Because that's one of the chief things that is seen across the board in all educational institutions, is really focusing on those executive functioning skills. The other piece we've done this year is we spent a lot of time as a whole faculty looking at our scope and sequence, reviewing and documenting that for all of our curriculum strands. And the final piece we're working on this year that relates to that is our NEAS accreditation is a 10-year cycle, and we're now in our 5th year. And in the 5th year, you have to do a big report out to them as to what you've been doing, how you've been progressing along those goals you instituted for yourselves in the past. So that report is just about finished, and we'll be sending it out in about 3 or 4 weeks. Any questions, please chime in at any time. Financial sustainability is always a huge part of what we do. We're always looking to try and make the organization run as efficiently as possible while maintaining the program. So we're always working on that. Enrollment and marketing. Enrollment is probably one of the most challenging pieces for us to really get a handle on. There's families in flux, and because we don't have contracts with our students or our families ahead of time, we don't know necessarily if they're actually going to come the next year. We hope they will, and we ask them to communicate with us about that. And sometimes they're great about that, but sometimes we don't always know that they're going to be moving on from our institutions. So that's a tough one for us to balance. The key there is we have out-of-district families tuitioning into the school, and over time we want to increase those numbers. It's been challenging is that we're right on the cusp. We've had to turn families away who want to tuition in the kindergarten level because we're pretty full at that level. And if we need to get a sort of a 5 or 6 number of students who want to tuition in outside of districts for us to be able to then add another group of kindergartners or a combination class or something like that. So if it's only 2 or 3, we're just not quite there that we can make that jump because it does come down to cost. Development, for independent schools, the development efforts is really a big part of what they do. We're sort of at our early stages as an institution. We're only in our 7th year of operation in this model. But most independent schools have an annual fund that may raise 5 to 10% of their operating costs on a regular basis. So our budget is around the $2 million piece, so that would mean us raising $100,000 or $200,000 every year. And we haven't reached that, but ultimately that will be our goal. And that's what most independent schools are doing, is that their outside fundraising helps offset the operating costs, because that's just the cost of running an independent school and a business model that has a challenging bottom line, but a really important piece. Yes, please.
You mentioned the kindergarten numbers versus the 5th and the 6th grade, and I was trying to make sure I understood that you're saying that's full, but the 5th and 6th is not, and so you can't take on more in the kindergarten unless you get more 5th and 6th going. How does that? So,
well, what I need to get is so let's say we have an incoming class of around 21 kids in kindergarten, okay? And we have 3 other families out of district who would like to come in. So because I don't really want to go above 22 or 23 in kindergarten, I feel like that number really becomes too many at that age group. What we end up having to do is, because we also, and we have someone who can also speak into this, is almost every year we have some families literally come to us a week before school that we didn't even know were going to be here, and because we have a commitment to this community, we guarantee that we will provide a spot for anybody who lives in district. So I have to end up turning away a family that's out of district because I don't know whether I'm going to have a spot or not. Now, if I can get to the point, or if the school can get to the point where we have 5 or 6 families from out of district that want to tuition in, then we might be able to create a bubble group where we make a combination class, a K1 combination or something like that, and then both of those groups might be 14 or something like that versus one group of 26 or 27. So
it's not the financing income from the 5th and the 6th
that
determine whether you can add more. That's why I was thinking that number.
I'm sorry if I was confusing that. It's just a matter of figuring out how we can maintain that. And we have, most of our classes are around 17 or 18, but we have one class that only has 12 right now. So that, and that's just the function of the district in that particular year there was a dip in enrollment. And we also get interesting things because we're one class per grade thing, and we have some classes where they're almost entirely girls or classes where they're almost entirely boys. And that's just a function of being a smaller school and being a smaller pool to pull from.
How many kids tuitioned in this school year?
We have 10,
And what do you project for next year?
about the same.
Okay. And tuitioning in from where?
From Bennington, Arlington, Pownell, those are the primary places. We've had inquiries from other places. I think down the road, Sandgate could potentially be one because they are a sending town, which is, but we don't have any other sending towns that are close proximity. That's the other thing that makes us truly unique as a town academy model at the elementary, is we really only have one sending community. Which is the North Bennington Shaftesbury District 1. So that it is our community. So other town academies have 5 or 6 or even 10 sending communities that are within sort of their basin of operation. So that's one of the things that makes us truly unique in this model of institution.
And then when tuition kids come in, are they paying full tuition, the 16 or the 50, whatever?
We have
Or is it
families,
scholarship
we have
or
families
slide?
paying full tuition, and then we try to provide financial aid to other families if they need it. But we
Okay.
have sort of a bottom line that we feel like we can't cross. But we do try to provide financial aid when we can, the goal would be for us to, we have some full tuition families, but if we can get more, that will also be a boon to us in the long term. So the last number of years, I just want to point out some things. Last year was a particularly challenging year for us in that we had a significant revenue deficit. And the reason that was a combination of factors. We had budgeted for a higher number of students, and then a couple of families moved out, and when that happened, we lost their tuition for that year ahead. Yet we were well ahead in the budgeting cycle, and we had also some of those families, some of the students were high needs, and we had budgeted the cost of staff members for those high needs. So that really impacted us last year. In this year, we're facing some similar things, but the one piece I want to point out here is the difference between these two is when we look at this net revenue, this is our overall numbers, okay? So if you look at, but the big thing that offsets this is our annual campaign. So the money we're raising outside of tuition offsets some of this to some degree. But these numbers would be very different if not for the fundraising. So if we look at the years of operation, we've only had 2 years of operation where we really have actually been breaking even or doing better than that. The other years, we've really had some struggles. And what that led us to do is looking at restructuring the budget and what we could do to make the school function in this challenging situation. So this year, this is what we're looking at. And again, when we budgeted, because this was last year at this time, we were budgeting at about 114. This year, we have 107.5. So we are looking at a deficit again. But we did cut that down significantly. We were looking at a much higher deficit, but we did some restructuring as far as the way we operate the school. But we wanted to make sure that that was happening by not impacting program. So some roles went to part-time and things like that, and we were able to shave off some significant costs there. The pieces that are still challenging for us, and this I think is going to just continue to be this way, is, and we can try and offset it as much as possible, but special education revenue versus special education expenses. No matter what we do, even if we have a student or a staff member who their entire role is there to serve in the special ed capacity, the revenue we get we basically bill monthly for special education services to the district, and they pay us out. But even when somebody is 100% under our obligations servicing special education, we may be about 75% of the cost of that individual. And that's just the way the model works right now. And And so it's always a challenge for us. So we have to try and offset that a little bit through tuition dollars, really, to make it all work. But it's just one of those things that we struggle with. In looking at the year ahead, we do anticipate an increase in students from our 107 back up to that 114. A couple of different factors are leading us in that direction. Looking at the upcoming group of young people who are local in our district, that's favorable for us. We have some development. There's a development in the community that may offset some of those students, that we anticipate some new students coming from that. So that's why we're budgeting at that 114 range. And with the tuition increase, we're looking at hopefully maintaining a minor budgetary surplus for next year. That's our hope by creating these changes. The big changes here and what we're looking at, and Tim talked a little bit about this a moment ago, but we're looking at a 6.3% increase in tuition, which is significant, but it's, I think the other elementary schools in the area, because of the same kinds of things, the healthcare costs and things like that, we're looking actually at a 10% increase, or close to 10% increase. And what the major factors there are health insurance is going up significantly. For the last number of years, it's been around 11%. This year, they anticipate a 17% increase. So we've put that into our budget. We've had an increase in speech and language services. So we've had a part-time role there where we have someone in the building who's servicing speech and language pathologist, and she does a wonderful job. But that's been increasing every year. It was a 2-day-a-week role, then it was a 3-day-a-week role. Now it's a 4-day-a-week role, so we're increasing that need. And then overall increases in student services. So student services that are extra, but there's no way of sort of recouping the cost, is sometimes there are medical needs that don't fall under any sort of thing where they need some extra supports, and we have to absorb that cost as part of our operation. And there's no way to recoup those costs. You can't bill the district for some of those costs. So increases in student services are just a regular part of what we're doing, and that involves more counseling, more staffing with individual students who need support in the classroom and things like that. So those are really the pieces that are impacting that the budget in such a way as we're seeing. But I think we're trying to maintain the services in a great way, and I think the staff here does an amazing job with that. I'd love to entertain any questions. I can go back to anything if you want. One thing I do want to speak into that will be interesting and I've mentioned this in the past, but there are some changes going forward in special education and independent schools across the state. And one big one that'll impact us to some degree, but I think we may remain sort of in sort of a small enough capacity that won't. Special education spending is moving towards a per capita spending versus individual student needs. So basically, they're going to look at the data from an area as to how much special education you've needed for the last number of years, and that's what they're going to give you. So they're not going to look at individual student needs. They're going to base it on sort of your historical numbers and things like that. We are right at the cusp right now. We're small enough that we will still be able to work at that individual student level. But at the larger statewide level, they're going to be looking at that per capita calculation. The other piece that's going to be interesting is independent schools across the state are all being asked to serve special ed needs. So every independent school is going to be asked to be able to do that. And it's going to be a requirement for them to receive any state funding. We are the only independent school, even of the town academies, that serves all the levels of special education, which means there are, I believe, 14 different categories. We serve all 14. No other institution in the state serves all 14 of those. So that makes us unique in that respect. So this model we created, I think, is a really amazing one, and I think it's being successful. I think we still have things to learn as we go forward, but I think the smiles on the faces of the kids who come through this place every single day is a testament to what is happening here. And I think the staff are really the major part of why that is. Yesterday, we had a celebration of reading, and I don't know, maybe 90% of the kids came in costume of their favorite book characters, and it was just an amazing celebration of learning. And that's what we hope to continue going forward. Yes, please.
My question, yes,
Yes.
you hit on it, special ed costs.
Yes.
And knowing down the road that all schools, independent schools, are going to have to bear the association of that. My question is whether there is an umbrella of support or help to be looked at from an SU perspective that we currently don't have, with that requirement coming that may be able to take and offset that cost. And I don't know whether that's in the working, but probably Ray can work some kind of miracle out there.
I think this is larger than just our district.
Right.
I'm actually on the Vermont Independent School Association board and working at the state level to try and navigate this. But it's something that they haven't quite figured out, and they've delayed. They were going to try and implement it this last year, and then they were like, no, we can't do it yet. So they're probably going to delay a little bit longer to really analyze the situation. But what it is coming down to is they're going to be asking all independent schools to have licensed special educators, or they're going to be asking the districts to supply special educators to go into those, to push into those schools, which I don't know if that's going to, they haven't quite figured out whether that's going to prove more costly or actually less expensive. So they're trying to figure out whether having someone who works for the district come in and do it is going to be, what's the best model for that. And for the smaller schools, for us, we have a dedicated special education teacher, we have support staff, we have a number of roles involved with that. For some of the smaller schools, where I'm talking schools that may only have 30 students, it's going to be very difficult for them to potentially meet those requirements. Because I think we're probably right at the edge of where we can make it work.
And that's why I'm asking the question, because it's an opportunity for an umbrella of protection to be sought into the building of that process, and as to how it's going to play out, that we may be able to benefit from.
So I've seen, I don't have an answer for you. I think there's a lot of discussion as to what may be the best model going forward, but I have not seen one that I am confident in the numbers that it's really going to make it work.
Tim?
Yes.
What is our special ed population mission?
This year we have 14 students in our special ed program.
And last year we had maybe 1 or 2 more.
We had about 17 or 18 students, and then the need can vary per student. Some students may only need one level of service, and then some may need significant services. Yes.
And special education position, is that paid, is that funded through the SU?
We bill for it to the SU. But again, our dedicated staff member, even as much as we can bill for them, we're maybe only recouping about 75%
of their salary
of
for
the
that
cost.
position?
Yes, for us to
For
actually
salary.
have, for their salary and benefits and things like that. Yes.
So you take into consideration all the other kids there, like say from Head Start or from the pre-K program in Bennington, as part of the enrollment as well?
So when they come to us, yes. But yes, we are looking at kids who are in the Head Start who are going to probably be coming to us and things like that, absolutely. So when we're looking at our incoming class of kindergartners, we're looking at ECC, we're looking at Myers-Prouty, we're looking at Head Start, at all those different institutions as to who may come here. So between all of those different places, we have usually a pretty good number of who's going to actually come through the door in the fall. But there's always a couple who sort of crop up in the middle of the summer that folks didn't know about. Yes.
I'd like to make, I know I'm stepping on your time. but
No.
Go right ahead. I mentioned the direct certification drop in number that caused equalized people to lose three, count to lose three. I'll just report on what the information I had, which is last year we had a direct cert count of 30 students. This year we have 21. That was in January, and it could vary because it varies monthly in a different report. But what was reported in October was 14. So there's 50% change right there that affected there's change from the 30 considerably down to 14. That's 50% of it. And then we've only come back up halfway.
There's a lag in the cycle of that. When families move from one district to another, or from out of state into our district, it takes the state, usually by November, they may catch up with where kids are in the schools, and so our direct certification list may include students who have moved on from us, so that those kids don't count, and then they may not have gotten the kids who have moved into our district who may get those qualifications. And I want to just, one piece that I'd like to acknowledge, the question about the free and reduced lunch program. I think for us, if we look at our budget every year in operating that program for our school, and we do provide free and reduced lunch through the federal program for any students in our school who need that. But in the rest of the schools in the county, they have free and reduced lunch for everybody. So if we were able to get back into that consortium again, I think it would be a huge benefit to our students and to our bottom line, because every year we're losing $25,000 to $30,000 a year in maintaining our food service program, just because it costs more than we generate in revenue from families paying for lunches and things like that. Because we're such a small contract, we have to pay a larger cost overall, if that makes sense to folks. So if we can get back into that program, I think it would be a great benefit for the community, as well as really for our kids. That's what it comes down to.
I have one other point. There was a question earlier about how many tuition from outside the district schools you have, and you mentioned 10. I would like to point out that based on what I see on your audit expenses and income, the village school covers the costs of those students through their tuitions plus other money they raise. None of that, as far as I can tell, really comes from North Bennington and district tax bills. I thought that was a good point because some years ago that was brought up in these meetings by people who weren't happy with what we did, and I wanted to point out that in fact this model is pretty well working to make sure those costs are covered by their tuitions and fundraising for the students. Hopefully we can increase that.
Any further questions for the village school?
All right, thank you very much.
So, is there any other questions or information to be presented at this meeting? Okay, so that covers all the articles that have been warned, and the only thing, let's see, I just want to make sure I covered everything from the minutes from last year. The only thing left would be a motion to
Did you
adjourn.
approve minutes?
If they're part of the
We
report,
approved the
yes,
report.
we did.
Sorry.
Just a move
I would
to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn has been made. Is there a second? Mr. Ulrich with the second back, and all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. See you next year.